As promised, here I am with my top 5 books of 2017. And if I get super impassioned in this, I'm sorry. But I had a lot of books this year that were really great. Well, let me clarify. I had 3 books that I rated as 5 stars. After that, I had a badoodle of 4 stars, which is about my general rating, although Goodreads says my average this year was 3.3. So I did not have a hugely great reading year in terms of spectacular books. So I had to, I put on the top 3 that got 5 stars, and then I kind of had to pick and choose from a lot of 4 stars that were all really great. But I did end up coming out with 5 that really just spoke to me in that way. I will say this is the first year that Sarah J. Maas has put out 2 books that I did not put both of her books in the top 5. And I'll talk about why one is here and the other isn't here when I get around to it. I don't know why I said when I get around to it. That's like the book that's number 5 for me. So we're just gonna get right into number 5 of my top 5 books this year, and that is A Court of Wings and Ruin by Sarah J. Maas. If you don't know, this is the 3rd book in the Court series, and I'm not, for that reason, going to go too huge into the whys and why nots of this book, but for me, it was a really great way to close this series, and it did a lot of the things that I wanted it to while offering up some surprises. It wasn't perfect. I did rate it 4 stars, but it was what I wanted and delivered in a way that gave me things that I didn't know I wanted as well, which I really liked. And I knew that this or Tower of Dawn had to be on the list, but I'm honestly not too pumped about Tower of Dawn, and maybe I'll do a review of that at some point. And it will have to be spoilery, because the reasons that I'm not a super huge fan of Tower of Dawn are spoilery. So again, not going to get into that now. But I just, in terms of a series, I know that it's not technically closing either, but in terms of a series just summing itself up, and a series that meant so much to me, this was just fabulous. And I did do a review of this. I will link it up above so you can watch some spoiler-free thoughts from me on that. Book 4 from me of my top 5 is actually Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. And I would never have expected that, honestly, when I started to get into it. And if you've seen my full review, which I'll link up above, you know that it took me like over a year to finish it. And not because it wasn't good, but just because I couldn't read the print version. I had to listen to the audiobook, because for me, when something is that slow, I skim. And as I was reading, I just noticed that I was really respecting Patrick Rothfuss's way with words. So I didn't want to skim, like, at all. So I listened to the audiobook, and the audiobook's over like 24 hours. It's crazy, and my life got crazy, and I couldn't listen to it in huge bursts because of how slow I found some parts of it, which is why it was 4 stars, not 5 for me. But just, it really is a magically written book that is wonderful, and it really was worth all of the hype that everyone was telling me that it was, and I'm so glad I took the time to read it, and I finally finished it this year, and I will definitely be reading A Wise Man's Fear, and I'm just in love with Patrick Rothfuss as a writer, which, you know, isn't always the case. Sometimes you just really love a story, even if it isn't super well written, and in this case, it's very much both for me. Like, I'm in love with the story, but I would also, like, read, I don't know, cooking, microwaving instructions from Patrick Rothfuss if he wrote them, because I'm in love with his writing so much. So that's why that's number 4. Despite the intense amount of nonfiction that I read or listened to this year, I didn't have any on my bottom 5, and I only have 1 in my top 5. And at number 3 coming in, that is Wishful Drinking by Carrie Fisher. Yes, the great late Carrie Fisher. General Organa always in our hearts. She I read Princess Diarist a couple of years ago, and I was kind of disappointed by it. I didn't think that it was great, story-wise, but I loved listening to Carrie Fisher talk, and her wit is, as always, fabulous. And I'm going to talk about her in the present tense, I guess, because she'll never be gone for me. I did cry during The Last Jedi. I cried like a baby. So I'm a big Carrie Fisher fan, but Wishful Drinking was just on the nose, talking about her life and her mental illness struggles, and just, it was one of those things where I couldn't stop listening to it. Like, I loved it so much, and it was so fun, and I was laughing out loud, and it was just a fabulous listening experience, especially going through some stuff that I've been going through this year. Listening to her talk about, like, the struggles in her own life with so much panache was just uplifting in a lot of ways. So I really loved that listening experience, and I'm so glad that I listened to it, and I would listen to it again in a heartbeat, and it was just beautiful and wonderful, and I loved it. So that's why it's on the list. Book 2 is on the list, not so much for the story, because as we interrogated it in class, I became slightly less convinced about the story, but more about the reading experience that it gave me, and that's Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. And when that came up on my class syllabus, I was like, oh god, not this. Because I've heard so many different things about it, and I was like, oh god, this is like some basic teen YA romance, and I'm not into it. Not into it at all. But it was the one book that I had read in everything that was going on this semester that I stayed up late to read it, because I just had so much feeling from the book, and I was so excited by the reading experience, and I was enjoying the story. And like I said, I now hem and haw about the story in some aspects, but it was just so great to have that experience after so long of reading, really just becoming the slog for school, in a way that I thought I understood from undergrad, but oh boy, did I not understand this new level. And just like, it was just so nice to be so interested in a story that I was reading, like, in my bed after midnight. Like, I missed feeling like that as I was reading. So I did enjoy that. So thank you, Fangirl. Number 1 book that I read this year, and get ready, because I have not done a review of this one yet, and I am just so stoked, is Alumini by Jay Kristoff and Amy Kaufman. And let me tell you, I have owned this book for, I don't even want to know how long, but whenever Alumini came out in paperback, it was a while ago, but you may notice this is not the paperback, and there's a story behind that. But I took Alumini on my vacation when I went to live with my family in Florida last month, and it was mostly because I was having Bibliomates for Beginners read it. So there's an hour-long book club episode, which I'll link above, because I was so interested in reading it, and I've been talking it up so much to people at the bookstore, stuff like that. This is genuinely one of the coolest things I've ever read. Like, I can't even explain it to you, but like, I don't know if you've never opened this or what, but like, there's not really genuine text in this book. And what I mean is that none of this is like a traditional story, like a third person or first person story. It's like, it's insane. There are stream of consciousness, there are pictures, there are diagrams, there are, tons of things. And it's a sci-fi adventure about this really basic story, which is that a guy and a girl break up, and the day they break up, their planet is destroyed, and they're now running away from the enemy. And they discover that they really do love each other, and they're fighting to get back to each other while, everything's tearing itself apart. And so it's like a really basic at its core YA love story that I maybe do or don't believe just because YA romance. But like just the way that it was put together, every single page, it's so thoughtful. It's so fabulous. And it's so cool. And so right after I finished reading it, I left the paperback with my mom, my brother, and I said, you have to read this right now. And I came back and I bought the hardcovers of this and the second book, which I haven't read yet, but I plan to. And it was just so cool. And again, in a year where I haven't really read too much that was fabulous and too much that grabbed my interest, like something this cool and unique just blew my brain. And I'm so happy about it. And I just think everyone should read it. And if you like, books that are different at all and you like sci-fi and, you want something interesting to read, just go get it. Just go get it right now. I'll wait, come back, watch the Bibliomensch beginner thing. I don't know. Just read it. Just look at it. Just find it in a bookstore and look at it. It's fantastic. So, I'm going to stop because otherwise I'll just keep talking about Alumini. In review, starting from the bottom, we have A Court of Rings and Ruin by Sarah J. Maas at number 5. At number 4, Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. Number 3, Wishful Drinking by Carrie Fisher. Number 2, Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. And number 1, Alumini by Jay Kristoff. If you missed my bottom 5, I will link to that above as well. But otherwise, I look forward to 2018 and reading some really great things, including but not limited to the sequel to Alumini. Thanks, guys. Bye.